Yo, so today we're going to be reacting to Digital Circus lore. So, yeah. Yo, what's this? It's 9 seconds.
Busting all the bells out the box. I just hit a lick with the box. Had to put
What?
the stick in the box.
What was that? Okay, we're going to listen to this lore.
This is MacBook Neo, an amazing all-new Mac
Sorry about this.
at a surprising price.
After some deep research, I've finally crafted the ultimate theory on amazing digital circus.
Sorry, this is AI voiceover, so yeah.
Episode 7, and in this video, I'm going to break down the entire lore and timeline of this episode. We won't miss a single detail, but to tie
what
all of this
episode is
together,
this?
first we need to
Episode
finally
7.
figure out what Jax's main fear actually is. As we all know, the main theme that all the events of episode 7 revolved around was the escape plan that Abel presented to the others, and if you look closely, then absolutely all the characters, even our madman Kinger, were genuinely fired up about the idea of leaving this digital prison. They were so determined that they blindly trusted Abel without any serious proof and were ready to follow him no matter what. All of this shows just how badly they want to leave the digital circus. However, if we look at
Okay, so yeah, we're just explaining a lot of Jax's lore. This is 31 minutes. We've only got into 45 seconds of this video. Not my video, this video that we're watching and reacting to. So yeah, just want to remind you.
Jax, then he was the only one who asked questions, and overall wasn't set on escaping. This idea was noticeable right from the very start of episode 7, when Pomni, Regatha, and Abel came to Jax for the keys.
I guess I'll check. These are all the keys I have where I don't know what they go to.
Wait, don't you want to come with us? This could be our one chance to finally leave all this behind.
Sure, why not?
On top of that, like I already said, all the other characters didn't ask Abel any questions at all and were confident that he was a real C&A employee stuck inside a mannequin.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't ask any questions either if I were in that digital circus.
Body. Only Jax constantly pointed out the fact that nobody actually knows who Abel really is and kept questioning this whole idea.
Okay, you know what's gonna happen when we do all this? Kane's gonna pop out and say, "Congratulations on beating the Escape the Circus adventure," and everything's gonna go back to the way it always was.
We will definitely come back to this. It's just going to be a bit later. But for now, we need to remember one more scene that proves that Jax would be happy to stay inside the digital circus tent and never return to the real world. Zubul made it clear directly that all of them want to get out, because in the real world there are people waiting for them. Jax agreed with that, but in his words, you can feel a certain fear. It's like he agreed on purpose so nobody would start arguing with him again, so to speak. On top of all that, pay attention to how unwillingly Jax took the administrator pass, as well as a couple scenes where our characters were already one step away from a potential escape. Everyone was united. I'd say they all felt like one big family, and only Jax distanced himself from them. You can see how bad the idea of escaping feels for him, and while everyone walks together and talks about what they will do in the real world, Jax follows them silently and with fear in his eyes. He is genuinely scared of the thought that he will return to the real world, and next it will become clear why. During the final step toward freedom, Pomni experienced some kind of glitch and just froze from the fear that all of this was an illusion. However, that doesn't change the fact that she genuinely wanted to get out just like everyone else. At any other moment, Jax would have pushed Pomni aside and confidently gone to press the so-called right button, but this time pay attention to how scared and uncomfortable he is just from the thought that the digital circus is about to disappear from his life. And what happened after that, we all remember very well.
Something?
I already made a video where I talked about why Jax pressed the red button and left everyone in the digital circus. However, today I'm going to look at this situation, not from the point of view that Kane kind of forced him to do it, but dig a little deeper. We weren't shown another Jax panic attack for no reason as the peak of his fear and anxiety. Something like this already happened in the previous episode, however back then we were limited to just a panic attack, while in episode 7 it was mixed with several shots from Jax's real life. A quiet and peaceful neighborhood. Just as a random fact, most likely this place is located in the state of Missouri, that gets mixed with strange shots of a road, signs pointing to speed limits, and the possible presence of people on the road. All of this leads us to the thought that in the real world, Jax was responsible for a car accident, as a result of which a person died. This, by the way, explains the scene from episode 4, where Jax thought for a long time before getting into the car, or the scene from episode 2, when instead of driving the truck himself, Jax decided to make Gangle the driver. Putting all of this together, we understand that Jax has a panic-level fear of driving because of his actions in the real world. Considering that these exact memories appeared in his head at the moment of his greatest fear, it's very likely that this topic is his main psychological trauma, which is why Jax can't live calmly not only in the real world, but in the digital circus. Now let's go back to the scene where Jax agreed that in the real world, someone is waiting for him. While the others are waited for by family, friends, and co-workers, Jax has a completely different situation. He is waited for by the victim's relatives, the police, and a ton of memories of this event. I can easily imagine that during the investigation, Jax found out that there is a company called C&A, which can make it so a person is never found, and voluntarily decided to take part in the so-called experiment called the Amazing Digital Circus. Of course, you might argue that during the conversation with Abel, Jax stuck to the position that unlike Abel's story, none of them were C&A employees, and that they ended up in the digital circus by accident. But how much can you really trust this character right now? Remember how I said that Jax was the only one who asked questions and wasn't fully sure that the escape plan was real? All of this wasn't because Jax was worried that they might be getting lied to, but because he wanted to plant that seed of distrust in the heads of the other characters. All of this was so that they would also start doubting that the escape was real and wouldn't even try to make an attempt to carry out this plan. Jax genuinely wanted to stop everyone right from the start, and all of this was only because he is truly afraid of returning to the real world and diving back into that atmosphere of fear and anxiety. He genuinely wanted the others to change their minds and give up.
Okay, sorry I haven't talked in a while, but yeah, so once I'm just gonna explain why I'm not talking. So it's because, well, I'm like talking while the video is playing is because once I do that, like I talk really quiet in my videos. So sorry about that. And yeah, you'll only hear the videos instead of my voice. So that's why I pause every time I need to talk. So yeah.
Even the chance of a possible escape and just stay inside the digital circus. That's exactly why at the most critical moment Jax couldn't control himself and his inner fear of...
When it was time to add my son to our car insurance, I was scared to even think about my wallet.
Why
Okay.
at the most critical moment Jax couldn't control himself and his inner fear of ending up in the real world simply took over the rabbit's mind. As a result, Jax, without thinking about the other characters and their feelings and desires, single-handedly stripped everyone of even the smallest hope of returning to the real world. I'm more than sure that in any other situation Jax wouldn't have done this, but in that exact critical moment, Jax fully revealed his true personality, a coward and a weakling. By the way, that's exactly why he invented a new life for himself when he ended up in the digital circus, and he was genuinely convinced that this kind of way of thinking was the right one. If before we could only build theories and speculate that this kind of mindset is completely wrong, then now we understand the true reason behind Jax's behavior. He simply decided to create a new identity for himself to forget all the horror that was haunting him in the real world. All of this bullying by Jax.
Not sure. Let's try this out.
All of this was aimed at just one thing, completely wiping traumatic memories out of his head. This way we understand that all of Jax's problems didn't start in the digital circus, but long before this place ever appeared in Jax's life. This is what makes him very different from the others, since the other characters also had their own problems in the real world, but they were nothing compared to life in the digital circus, and that's exactly why they wanted to get out. While for Jax, the real world is way worse than anything that happened and is still happening to him in the digital circus. By the way, it's exactly because of the tragic incident in the real world that Jax reacts the strongest to the abstraction of other characters, and especially those who were close to him. We've already discussed the idea that it was Jax who became the reason behind Ribbit's abstraction. Did you notice that Ribbit and Kaufmo were equally close to Jax? However, almost all the mentions we've seen in the digital circus point specifically to Ribbit. This can really be connected to the fact that Jax isn't guilty in Kaufmo's abstraction, so he doesn't suffer from it as much. While when it comes to Ribbit's abstraction, Jax kinda had a hand in it. It's very possible that he feels guilt equal in strength to what he felt after the incident in the real world. That's exactly why Jax is so affected by the loss of Ribbit, and why she is his main trigger and the main focus of his visions. This theory is so interesting at least because there are a lot of contradictions, since some facts directly say that it was impossible from the very beginning, while others say that the whole plan was true from the start. Let's dive into the full timeline and look at this theory from every angle, and after that, you will see that our favorite characters actually did have a chance to escape, but one single action completely destroyed all chances of that. First off, it's important to understand who Abel is, because he is one of the key characters in this theory. Pay attention to the moment when Abel explains to the others that they need to be quieter, since Cain can be watching everything that's going on. The show creators put a clear emphasis on the paintings that show Cain's eyes. We will come back to this a bit later, but for now let's talk a little about Abel. After he shared his story of interacting with C&A, the focus shifted to the escape plan.
I did some digging, and I discovered that the stasis pods and the virtual world are both run in the same program. So, theoretically, if we were to access the master console hidden deep within Cain's office, we could terminate it and forcibly awaken everyone who's hooked up. Well, obviously, except for Cain.
How do we get into Kane's office?
We'll need to steal the key from Cain, and we'll also need administrator privileges.
At this point, we have several contradictions. One of the main signs that all of this was a lie from the start is the drawn bee, the exact same one that Cain constantly draws. On one hand, this really points to Cain's involvement in all of this. But why did you decide that Cain drew the bee during the development of this plan? Why did nobody think that Cain could have first seen the real escape plan and only then added the bee to it? If you pay attention, then Cain is almost always drawing, and he could have done this by accident. If you think about it, then none of the characters pay attention to the fact that Cain always draws bees. We as fans of the digital circus, and people who love noticing tiny details know this, but it's very unlikely that the characters are just as aware of it. Considering that Cain is actually a pretty scatterbrained AI, then I can really imagine that he kinda automatically drew the bee after accidentally discovering the escape plan, and so that nobody would discover it. He made what seemed like the best decision, just crossing out the bee. I get that way too much time was spent on this detail, but it was insanely important to do this so you understand that things here aren't as one-sided as they seem at
So,
first.
I think I'm gonna keep the I'm gonna stop the video right here. But have a good day. So, yeah, bye.